Get me somebody out here to wrestle. I don't care who it is.
Don't make number 2. Who knows, man?
Wait a minute. Somebody's music.
That's a million penalty.
We demand to know the whereabouts of Mr. Perfect for SummerSlam.
Why, he's in the dressing room.
But whose dressing room?
The dressing room of the winner. Who else? Woo!
Oh boy, we are back. Welcome to WGD Weekly with Stephen the Scum. Welcome to our first annual SummerSlam special on the day of the biggest event of the summer for WWE. Stephen the Scum are going to take a walk down memory lane and touch on all things that are classic to SummerSlam. We visit the good, the bad, and the ugly throughout the 25 years plus of the annual Summer Spectacular. Scum, we got a lot of ground to cover. Our interview last week with Buff Bagwell caused a big buzz on our page and on our sister page, Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. We want to touch on that briefly. We have a ton of new features that we'll introduce this week. It's a landmark show in the brief history of our program. We will be filling you in shortly on all the details on that one, including our first ever giveaway, where I think you listeners can win some great prizes from us here at WGD Weekly. And I think you have another bombshell to drop on us, Scum, or should I say, you are winding up to give our listeners a collective chair shot in the face regarding the next upcoming visitors that are going to join our shows. My man, are you with me?
I am with you here, my brother. Always a pleasure to be back with my longtime tag team partner, and you know that yourself, Steve. Always a pleasure to be doing business alongside a class act, top-notch work going on over at Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. Good to be back with them. And let's jump right in here. I'm pretty excited. We got a special show today, our first ever SummerSlam special. Like you said, we'll be touching on all things SummerSlam from the years gone by. A lot of great stuff there. To begin, Steve, like you said, a lot of buzz, good, bad, and whatever, with our interview last week with Marcus Buff Bagwell. Personally, enjoyed his company. Welcome the man back at any time. He was a pleasure to work with. Thanks to Buff Bagwell for joining us. A lot of great stuff that he had to say, and he's just the tip of the iceberg, like I've been saying, because speaking of guests, like you said, a big bombshell to drop on people. We got a back-to-back week special coming up that we are going to dub our hardcore double play. As next week, on August the 25th, Sunday night at 6 p.m., we're going to welcome one of the innovators of hardcore wrestling. Originally one of the sheep herders, Bushwhacker Luke, is going to be on the show next week. And then following him for the first time, Stephen the Scum are going to go to the extreme when we welcome former ECW World Heavyweight Champion Justin Credible to the show on Sunday, September 1st at 6 o'clock p.m. You do not want to miss those shows back-to-back. Getting hardcore, our hardcore double play. I know you're excited, I'm excited, and our guests are excited. And, Steve, that's just the tip of the iceberg, like I had just said, because there is a lineup, a superstar lineup, coming up of guests that we just cannot wait to drop on our listeners. We're real excited about them. In addition, you touched on, we have several interactive features that we're going to brief you on here later in our program that we want you, the WGD Weekly faithful, to come on board, come on and be a part of our show. Get involved in the show. You're going to win some great prizes if you do, possibly, including some great wrestling merchandise that we'll also tell you about over the course of tonight's broadcast, including our first grand prize, which is a real doozy that you won't want to miss out on. Plus, again, as you touched on, the biggest night of the summer in the wrestling industry is upon us. SummerSlam is tonight, and in accordance with the big WWE event on pay-per-view, we're proud to bring for you the first time ever, Stephen the Scum SummerSlam Special. Phew, that's easy for me to say, Steve-O. Let's hear you say that one 5 times fast, my brother.
Yeah, I'm going to take a pass on that, Scum, but I will tell you that I'm very excited about today's program. Tonight's SummerSlam is certainly going to be interesting. Let's hop right into our program. We got so much for you this week. We're covering all things SummerSlam, and I figure the first item we want to talk about, let's just breeze through the good, the bad, and the ugly of the event. Let's start on a positive note. Let's go with the good. Scum, I know you're going to have an opinion on this, and hell, you got an opinion on everything. That's where I start out with the greatest matches in the history of SummerSlam. There's so many to cover, so many big names that faced off. You name them, they were there. Anybody in the WWF, right off the top of your head, Scum. I wanted to get your expert, I guess I'll use expert loosely. What was your favorite or a few of your favorite matches in the storied history of SummerSlam?
Well, Steve, that is a pretty loaded question, my man. There's so many of them. I guess that, it's debatable. I'm sure people have their own favorites. So, personally, where my loyalties lie as far as some of my favorite performers. So when I think about my favorite matches or some of the greatest matches at SummerSlam, I'm going to stay on the same topic here, and I'm going to take a quick jaunt up north of the border, so to speak. I'm going to go where, why don't we say, it's nice to be back somewhere where you might get a little respect is where I'm going to go. And you know what I'm getting at here. You know where my loyalties lie. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of Bret the Hitman Hart and his work over the year. So, again, it's up for debate, I'm sure, as some of our listeners, and there are. I would agree. There's so many great matches over the 25, 26 years that SummerSlam has been in existence. I find myself leaning toward a few matches, all of which involve the Hitman. First off, I think anyone would agree, maybe not your favorite, but you just can't deny, Wembley Stadium, 1992, Intercontinental title, Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog. You had that huge crowd. You had just a classic match. You had the crowd split between the Bret fans and the Bulldog and his homeland, and they really knocked it out of the park. Just a classic. When you think of Bret Hart, you think of the matches that he put on, the mat technician, and take nothing away from Davey Boy either, because he had his share of great matches. And those two, as close as they were, they were family, they were brother-in-law. Just a real special moment. Just a great match. And again, I would have to rank that up there. If not my favorite, I would definitely put it up there as far as matches that have passed the test of time, and it's just hard to deny putting that one in there. Moving along the year before, once again, kind of his breakout moment as a singles guy. Not to be redundant, but I would have to say SummerSlam 91, Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect. Again, you and I both, Steve, big fans of Kurt Hennig. It's no secret to anyone who knows the history and the lore on that match that he came in there with a really bad injury, the back injury. Somehow, even with the discs or whatever was wrong with his back, I'm not sure exactly of the specifics. I just know that he was out there at less than 100% health-wise, and you certainly couldn't tell it the way he was bouncing all over the ring. It was a coming-out moment for Bret. As far as he went on to become one of the biggest single stars off of the Hart Foundation tag team where he had a lot of success. And that SummerSlam 91, Bret and Mr. Perfect, again, I know Perfect wasn't 100%, but I'd put that in there in my favorites. In my third, I don't know if everyone's going to agree on this, but it was just, I loved the gimmick at the time that he was doing. I loved when Bret had Canada versus America, and they went that way in 97. He had the Canadian faithful behind him. The American fans were booing him all over the rest of the world. They loved him still. He was going against the edgy product that they were throwing there and kind of belittling the American fans as being the bloodthirsty, violent. They wanted more violence and they wanted more vulgarity. And who better for him to take on that spot than the icon at the time of the WWF? Who better to represent America in a match that could have made it so Bret could never fight in the States again but The Undertaker? You get Shawn Michaels in there in the midst of Bret and his big feud, and no secret to anybody how that whole thing turned out a couple months later at the Survivor Series. But you get Michaels in there at the wrap, classic ending where Michaels misses the chair shot, lays out Taker, and then has to make the 3 count. Bret laid a perfect big lunger right hanging off HBK's nose, which I'm sure Shawn couldn't have been too happy about once they left the match. But I'd say SummerSlam 97, Bret and The Undertaker for the World Championship 2 is my third. So, Steve, I know there's a ton of other great matches, great moments in SummerSlam history, but being a pink and black guy, being a guy who you can vouch for, will scream the lyrics to "Oh Canada" on my front porch to the neighbors before I get ready to cut the lawn. Being someone who's no stranger to rocking a black leather coat with pink tassels and shoulder pads and those cheap plastic wraparound pink mirrored shades, these are moments I recall, maybe not necessarily the most fondly or the best, but given that you put me on the spot here, I'm going to throw these 3 classic Bret Hart matches on the table with anything that anyone out there is going to fire back with, my man. How about you?
You mentioned something between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, Survivor Series 97. I have no idea what you're talking about, but you're the expert. We'll move on from there. That's some pretty good stuff, and I can definitely vouch for the man. For better or for worse, I've certainly seen you, the Scum, in random crowds of people, somehow thanking them for letting you still be their hero, which I still have no idea why, and proclaiming that it's always great to see somewhere where they take care of their sick and their old. Let's move on from there. I got some favorites of my own over the course of the storied history of SummerSlam, and while I agree your choices are pretty legitimate, and I give you no argument on them, I'm going to actually go with another Hitman match that I think was one of my favorites of all time from SummerSlam, and that's a match between his brother Owen Hart, SummerSlam 94, steel cage match for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. Bret Hart was able to win that match on a great finish. Something about, Scum, again, you can attest to this. I've always been a fan of a little bit more of the hardcore, a little edgier stuff. Love the War Games, love Hell in a Cell. Elimination Chamber, I think it's, we'll get into that maybe another time. But as far as it goes, this steel cage match was a non-bloody steel cage match. It was a great match between the two brothers. The story, even if you were a beginning wrestling fan and never really took the time to understand what was happening in a wrestling match, this is textbook professional wrestling between two people that were in the business forever. They really knew what they were doing, and you could tell they knew each other well. Has to be maybe my favorite match of all time. But on the heels of that, there's another guy that's been in several SummerSlams from the beginning that was unbelievable and had a lot of his high spots, a lot of his main moments came at SummerSlam, and that's the Ultimate Warrior. You go back to 1988, Ultimate Warrior versus Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental title. Ultimate Warrior comes out and annihilates a man that held the Intercontinental title still to this day for the longest time, beat him in less than a minute. Move forward a year, Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude, again for the Intercontinental title. Fantastic match. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there will say, oh, the Warrior couldn't do anything. It was always the other guy in the ring. Listen, there's professional wrestling. There's showmanship. There's getting the crowd excited. The Ultimate Warrior did absolutely fine there, like him or not. He's outspoken. He's done some crazy things in his career, none of which I'm going to argue with either, Scum. But I really liked the guy, and I thought he really, really did a great job when he was in his prime in the World Wrestling Federation. Vince McMahon gave him an opportunity. He ran with the ball. He did what he could. That match between Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude in 1989 was great. Again, now in 1990, my favorite SummerSlam card of all time, Ultimate Warrior Rick Rude for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, again, inside that classic blue bar steel cage. I thought that was a great match. At the end, Ultimate Warrior was able to get up and over and beat ravishing Rick Rude and keep his world title. I thought it was a great match. Philadelphia Spectrum, that place was going bonkers from the minute the show started.
Steve, I couldn't agree with you more. We've talked a lot about the Warrior and his reconciliation the last couple of shows over the course of the last few months here with him being involved in the new video game and him and Vince McMahon exchanging some pleasantries finally and getting him sort of back in the family, so to speak. So it's kind of fitting that you would bring those up. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you're a liar if you're saying that you were watching SummerSlam 88 when Honky Tonk, you didn't know who the opponent was and that music hit. Listen to the crowd. Go watch it. Listen to the crowd that night in Madison Square Garden when his music hit. You tell me you were watching that and that you didn't get up off your seat and were excited when that music hit, and you weren't really watching that. You're making that up. You're believing the hype that you're reading on some internet site about him not being this or him not being that, because that was a great moment. I couldn't agree with you more. Warrior Rude, love the feud. I think both of those matches were great matches. Again, anyone can debate that there's other matches that might be more technically sound or more whatever, but hell yeah, man, I agree with you 100%. Ultimate Warrior certainly was a guy that SummerSlam just big things seemed to happen for him, whether that was planned or whether it wasn't. And I have like you said with mine, I got no arguments with you, my friend. I'll take those Warrior matches as really special moments throughout. And I'll watch them back again today and enjoy them just like I did in my younger years watching them.
Absolutely. And remember, folks, variety is the spice of life. We touched on it, both of us, in our own separate ways here about the Ultimate Warrior. And, there's always been a little bit of question of how great he was in the ring. And I'm certainly not going to take anyone's side. But remember this when you're out there. Not every single guy is going to get up on the top rope and do a 450 splash into a leg drop headstand, crack 2 beers, and make a sandwich. There's something to be said for wild men that run around the ring, get people excited, kill people with power moves, and run back to their locker room. Everybody has their own opinions on things, which is fantastic. We try not to get into any sort of heated debates like that on WGD Weekly. But I will say I get a little I'd be remiss if I didn't say I get a little upset when people can't appreciate simple savagery. All right, the most simple thing in the world is some guy coming out and going ballistic, and the Ultimate Warrior embodied that, and I thought it was great that Vince McMahon allowed him to have that type of a character, because even though everybody in the WWF and all around the wrestling universe at that point had some sort of character, the Ultimate Warriors was, he was a good guy, but you still didn't quite know where he was coming from, and he very well might hurt you. So I always enjoy his character. Getting on later in years certainly could debate that, but in the prime of his career, he was one of the best. Well, moving on from the good Scum, the next logical step is to move to the bad, I suppose. And then when we say bad, we're going at this point going to talk about blunders or some bad matches, or they say the botches or whatever like that. But in the vein of summer, let's say we will have some SummerSlam swings and misses, just like the heart of the baseball season. Some moments that on paper may have looked like they would have been moments that would be a dream match or someone would dream of seeing. But then for whatever reason, they didn't play out that way in the ring. Scum, I know you're a baseball fan like I am. Any big swings and misses that come to mind, my man?
Well, yeah, that's a very good analogy that you make there, Steve. The heart of the summer, thinking about heading out to the ball field, the old swing and miss. I mean, not to mention, the Scum has always considered himself the Babe Ruth of wrestling radio. So,
come on.
Before I get into this, Steve, I wanted to touch back on something that you had just said when you were talking about the Warrior. And it does. Not only does it play on the Warrior, it plays into my friendship with you, because one of the things that I've always found very endearing about yourself is I've always really appreciated your very own simple savagery. Because make no mistake about it, our listeners, this man, very eloquent in his savagery, but he is a savage. Don't let him kid you. Anyhow, first one that comes to mind, Steve, and I know you're going to agree with me on this, is at the time, 1989, if you were watching, say, a year prior to this, and you could have had a dream match. Now, tag team wrestling wasn't what it is today. It wasn't a couple of names thrown together. It wasn't a couple of guys that they just have the people write in and vote on Twitter or whatever they do to name a tag team. Tag team wrestling was a legitimate draw. The Road Warriors, the British Bulldogs, the two teams that I'm going to bring up right now, maybe at the top of them from either company you would look at as an all-time dream match at that time. So you had Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard come into the WWF, and they're with Bobby Heenan. Great pairing. I mean, who better to put them with? And then on the other side of the coin, you have the classic, quick, and technical Bret the Hitman Hart teamed up with the powerhouse Jim Neidhart and the Hart Foundation. So SummerSlam 89, at the beginning of the card, we get Anderson and Blanchard and the Hart Foundation in a dream tag match. I mean, but there's no build-up. They had just come in, and the match wasn't that bad. Obviously, with those guys, it's going to be good. I just think, as far as a swing and miss, like you said, I mean, you could have built a feud with Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard and the Hart Foundation that would have been fantastic television. It could have been several matches. You could have done them on Saturday night's main event. You could have maybe had them, captain a team at the Survivor Series or something. You could have brought it around and then had a big payoff at a WrestleMania. Who didn't dream about that match if you were a fan of Crockett and you're a fan of WWF in the late 80s? Anderson, Blanchard, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, I mean, that can't miss. And again, it wasn't a bad match. It wasn't terrible, but I just think that it could have been bigger and it could have been better given those four legendary competitors. Moving along, I think another swing and a miss, and a lot of people are going to say at the time, I didn't like him, I didn't this or that, he got pushed down our throats, it's undeniable, though, in the build-up for SummerSlam 1993, when Lex Luger showed up and he body slammed Yokozuna to start that feud. People were on board. He was the All-American guy. People were going nuts just to see a man of that size scooped up and body slammed like that. They did the whole Lex Express thing. They pump all this money into the promos. He goes all over the country. He this, he that. Even if you weren't going to have Luger win the title at SummerSlam and you were going to continue to play the feud out, one way or another, a count out in a main event that you built for months with a bus tour named after a guy, representing the red, white, and blue at an All-American SummerSlam, as far as swings and misses goes, and again, say what you want about Lex Luger, take your pick, you like him, you don't. Kind of like you were saying with the Warrior earlier, Lex Luger was a proven commodity, a former WCW world champion. He come in, he was as big of a name as they had at that point. Personally, with that build-up, maybe it wouldn't have been that unpredictable, but I don't see why Luger didn't get the strap then. But even if you weren't going to have him win there and you were going to play it out to Survivor Series or next time around to the Rumble or to wherever you were going to do, how do you not kind of feel cheated with that kind of build-up and then the main event winds up in a count-out? So those are my two swings and misses, Steve. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I'd love to hear yours. What do you got for me, man?
Well, Scum, I'll tell you that I agree with yours. I have two separate ones, but I'm going to touch back base real quick here with this Anderson and Blanchard versus the Hart Foundation 1989. You want to talk about, that could have been an hour Broadway. That match could have stole the show. There's no way it couldn't have. Tully Blanchard, Art Anderson, the half of the Four Horsemen, Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. You could break them up in any sort of one-on-one matchup you want and get a 30-minute to an hour classic. Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, all of them were pretty good singles wrestlers as well. I can't say pretty good, but 3 out of the 4 of them were maybe 3 of the best singles wrestlers ever. So to put them in that classic tag team setup, right in the heart of tag team wrestling, that was certainly a swing and a miss, and that was swinging at ball 4 all day long. Luger versus Yokozuna, it just didn't seem to make any sense to me. I was a freshman in college at the time, and so I can't say my interest in pro wrestling wasn't waning. It was just I had so many other things on my plate that I wasn't quite around for that storyline, and I do know that it was baffling to me tuning into SummerSlam that year. Like, what? Nobody won the main event. Granted there was that count out, but to me that wasn't anything great. I got 2 other guys I wanted to talk to you about, 2 other matches, 3 people total. Again, the Ultimate Warrior is going to show up in this, but not so much on the good side here. It's 1992. It's one of the last years I had to really enjoy a summer full of wrestling before I went off to school. Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage at SummerSlam. Ric Flair walking around the ring, Scum. Doesn't do anything. I think he cut a promo. I think he did a little bit of interference here and there, but he did nothing. That's Nature Boy Ric Flair on one of your biggest events of the year, walking the halls, doing nothing. So it never made sense to me why they could have put Ric Flair in some sort of a program and gotten him involved, because he's one of the biggest draws ever. And again, you go back a couple of years, and to my favorite show, my favorite Survivor Series of all time, I'll have to say I'm a little critical of this match between 2 absolute legends. And again, kind of based off of what you were saying with Anderson and Blanchard versus the Hart Foundation, it was great to just see him get in the ring and compete, but, the ending wasn't that great, and the length of the match wasn't that good. I think Dusty Rhodes and the Macho Man Randy Savage went about 2.5, 3 minutes. Macho Man got him in a roll-up. It was super quick. It wasn't nearly what either one of those two, what we expected of them in the ring. And I know that there was the big craziness with Sapphire not showing up for her match with CM. Both of these performers were going on to bigger and better things down the road here right around the corner. So I know that there could be some reasons for why that match wasn't the best, but in a purity sense, in the sense of, hey, it's a big pay-per-view, let 2 guys put on a great show. I don't think either one of them did very good, and it was definitely, to me, a strikeout. All right, Scum, moving on from the good, the bad, and now on to the ugly. And I know that you got an opinion on this, Scum. What was one of your ugly moments from SummerSlam?
Well, I think there were certainly a few over the years. I'm interested to hear yours as well, Steve. One that immediately pops to mind that I think anyone could agree with is just on the fact that there was only one way that it could really turn out was SummerSlam 1994. They built around, if you remember, the Undertaker versus fake Undertaker angle. And, I mean, they had, Leslie Nielsen leading up when the Naked Gun movies were out, running around.
I remember.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest with you, I mean, realistically, as that goes in, and that's building up for the biggest pay-per-view of the summer. Now, was there really any chance that, all right, it's Undertaker versus the fake Undertaker, and the winner is the fake Undertaker? I just don't see where that ever could have possibly in a million years have happened. I mean, you got one of the most iconic, one of the most legendary figures, and it was obvious he was with Paul Bearer and not the $1 Million Man. I mean, The Undertaker, wasn't, at one point maybe when it first started you thought that, but they had obviously tipped their hand that was never going to happen. So I just can't, for the life of me, I can't see why they would have had that as the main event, as the main attraction at SummerSlam. I mean, yeah, there were other matches on that card. There was a world title match and Brett Nolan in the cage that you spoke of earlier, but I mean, geez, I mean, what the heck, what was anyone possibly thinking there when they, all right, Undertaker versus fake Undertaker. So as far as my first swing and a miss, that is exactly what I would go with.
Well, Scum, I'd have to say I agree with you 100% on that, but I was going to say something along the line. Oh, hold on 1 second, Scum. I mean, so there's somebody knocking at the door here in the studio.
We're trying to run a show here. I mean, you expecting somebody, Steve?
Scum, it's General Adnan. It's General Adnan LKC.
What the heck? We're trying to run a show here. I mean, you got Haku, French Martin.
Where are you been?
I mean, wait a minute. What are you guys doing here?
Se mueren de ver ese hombre, que es increíble, que los hombres latinos lo ven a ese hombre, lo tienen en
French, I
odio
don't speak Spanish. Okay, what? Oh, they want to sit in. They want to be a panel. Apparently, we'll have a panel of experts talk about the ugly moments from SummerSlam. What do you say?
Oh boy, this ought to be just fantastic, Steve. Whatever. Yeah. I suppose if they wanted to. I mean, what else could possibly happen here? I don't.
Why not?
Wait a minute. Is at the door? Are you expecting somebody else with you guys here?
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Nikolai Volkov, what are you doing here?
Yeah, brother. Here we go again with this nonsense. I thought this was over about 25 years ago.
Well, apparently he's asking that we all rise in respect for the Soviet. Is that even still a country?
Get on with it if you need to, Volkov. I'm sitting right here. Go ahead.
Yeah, hats firmly on head. All right, guys, everybody sit down. Scum, have a seat. General Adnan, please put the flag over in the corner. Yes, thank you. Okay, well, getting back to it, I was going to give you my most ugly moment from SummerSlam, but at this point, I think I'll sit back and allow General Adnan maybe here. Why don't you fill us in on what you feel is the ugliest moment from SummerSlam?
بالله الرحمن الرحيم أيها الأخوان العرب أقدم إليكم.
General, we're talking about SummerSlam here. I appreciate your well wishes, and yeah, my kids are doing good. How's little Mustafa doing? Good.
Let's have a modicum of decency, Scum.
What we're talking about here, pal, is what were they thinking moments. Can you at least add on? Can you at least stay on subject here? I mean, again. Let's go here. We got a show to operate.
Let's keep it relevant to classic wrestling, shall we?
البطل تاج الاسلاتر واني فخورا به وجميع العرب في العالم يفتخرون بالبطل تاج الاسلاتر.
So you want to come in here and you're going to blame that loss in '91 on Sergeant Slaughter just because you had the guy brainwashed and he came to his senses and went back to his country? I mean, please, you look like a sausage wrapped into a singlet out there, Adnan. You're going to try and blame a former WWF champion? Come on, let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next panelist here. I mean, give me a break. We're running a serious show. We got listeners. We got a loyal following. I mean, give me a break, Adnan. Haku, you want to lay it on me here? What was your thought for the moment that what were they thinking at SummerSlam? Wait a minute. The Kiss My Ass match was 1999 SummerSlam. It was Billy Gunn that fought The Rock. Greg the Hammer Valentine wasn't in the company for a decade almost at that point. Are you kidding me? Greg the Hammer Valentine Kiss My Ass match. Did any of you guys even come in here prepared? Give me a break. Bobby the Brain Heenan was over in WCW at that point in time. Come on. I mean, Frenchie Martin, anything that you can bring to the table here regarding the moments at SummerSlam where what were they thinking?
Se mueren de ver ese hombre, que es increíble, que los hombres latinos lo ven a ese hombre, lo tienen un odio porque Porque el tipo, mira, déjame, Rick, please. Ravicioso que está ese señor. Rick Rude, Paul Orndorff. ¿Qué tiene Paul Orndorff?
Rick Rude, those matches we talked about earlier with the Ultimate Warrior, those were great matches. Are you kidding me? Paul Orndorff wasn't even around at SummerSlam. Steve, what are these guys even doing? Frenchie, you want to talk about someone laying an egg at SummerSlam? How about you and your man Dino Bravo against Morocco in '88? I mean, Don Morocco could have a good match with a damn broomstick. You come in here, you Rick Rude and Paul Orndorff. Paul Orndorff was not even in the company when SummerSlam went on. Any of you guys possibly, Steve, I don't know what even to say to these guys.
I don't know either, Scum. Seems like these guys came in here with both guns blazing, and you seem to be taking them on one-on-one, just like all of our readers out there wanting to try to stump the Scum. I hope this is a lesson to you guys. Oh, Nickel again with the national anthem. Come on already. Lay off, okay? We're trying to have a show here. All right, Scum.
At least before they leave here, Berlin, can you please, I mean, a man of decency, a man of honor in your country. Berlin, could you at least possibly chime in with something relevant here, please?
Kunst des Ringens, die amerikanischen Ringer gar nicht verstehen.
No, I don't know. I think that's a little bit inappropriate. This is a program that goes out. Kids are listening. I agree.
Yeah, well, a little bit inappropriate, but I agree with them on part of that. I mean, what were they thinking putting Mabel in the main event in '95 with Diesel? I mean, at least Mr. Berlin over here could at least apparently has his performers and his time frame down right. I mean,
I thought he could maybe articulate it a little bit better than that, Scum.
Well, I mean, possibly, but I mean, look at what you're dealing with here. I mean, these clowns come in here, they interrupt our show, they this, they that. Wait a minute, seriously, Volkov again? Get these guys out of here.
Oh, come on. All right, guys, out the door you go. We got a show to get. If you're not gonna help us, get on out the door. We hope it doesn't hit you in the ass on the way out. Get out of here. Every single one of you. Let's get some order back in here, Scum.
Absolutely. We got better things to do with our time than those jokers. They come in here, they say they're our foreign board of directors, that panel of foreign heels. Please.
I have a bone to pick with our international correspondent, Matt. He told us nothing of this. I have nothing on the wire. I have nothing in our email. Nothing has come. When we were on our jet this morning to the studio, Scum, I didn't get any sort of text. Did you?
I didn't get anything. I'm going to have to shake down our old buddy overseas, Matt, as well. I mean, he springs and down on us. Comes in here, the nerve of that guy.
Well, he left his flag in the corner here. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I think I'm going to hold it onto a souvenir. Maybe I'll put it in the gimmick garage sale. What do you say, Scum?
Yeah, maybe we can give it away as a prize or something. I don't know who'd want it.
Yeah, well, let's move on. We got a show to do. What do you say?
Absolutely. Please, let's move on.
Well, Scum, that was something else here. I don't know what we were thinking with all these crazy people running around our studio. But let's move back to our show here, getting back to some resemblance of order. Let's get some order in here. Let's talk about some information on how you can get a hold of us and how you can watch our show. Let's start with our email address, Scum. We got it all set up this week. StephenTheScum@gmail.com. That's StephenTheScum@gmail.com. Our Facebook page is Facebook.com/WGD Weekly. And, of course, the main page, we update daily the best content in classic pro wrestling on the internet today. Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. Go hit that like button. Check out our content. There's going to be something you like, whether you like the classic stuff, super old, Japanese, we got it all. Take a look, Wrestling Glory Days on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @Wrestling'sGDays. Now, when you want to participate with Stephen the Scum, we're going to need a couple of things from you. We're going to need your name. If your name on Facebook is different, send some messages to us and win some really, really cool prizes. Here's the Scum to tell you about his new segment, Stump the Scum.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So to all you listeners out there in Glory Days land, all of our loyal followers that tune in here to WGD Weekly with Stephen the Scum. Here is the interactive part of our show that we're introducing. First, my segment, both myself and Steve will be introducing our own segments where you can win some really cool stuff.
My segment is going to be called Stump the Scum, and it's a basic premise. What you're going to be doing is you will send along, I'm going to give you on a show, I will give you our first topic here in a moment. I'm going to give you a topic, and personally, I will not be looking at your submissions. You will submit questions, and as the title says, you will try to stump the scum. If you do stump the scum, you will receive some really great prizes, and we will get more into detail with that as to what you could possibly win as our next few shows come along. We will clue you into that. But what you'll be doing is you'll be emailing, as Steve said, to steventhescum@gmail.com. Be sure to have your name included, and if your name on Facebook is different than the name that you will be giving, please include that as well so we can mention you on the show. And what you'll be doing is you'll be submitting questions based upon the category that I select, and you'll be trying to stump the scum. And I got to be honest with you here, folks. It's a pretty simple premise. I promise it will be Steve and our international correspondent, Matt, who will be going through the questions, and they will be selecting them. So the scum will not be looking at these questions at all. He'll be doing his homework throughout the week, but really, Steve, you can vouch for me here when I say this, baby. And when I say this, what I'm talking about is the scum don't need to do his homework, baby, because he has got the brains. And when it comes to stumping the scum, I don't think any of these hicks out there in Radio Land can do it.
Oh, come on, Scum. Here we go again with the Scum's weekly heel turn. I don't think anyone... Let's make one thing clear. We're here to entertain the fans. Let's leave getting over by yourself to some other podcast with some other bum.
But let's make no mistake about it. The scum does not need to get over, baby, because he is the most over man in wrestling radio today. And like I was saying, if you think you can write your little answers in and try and stump the scum. But as I said earlier, I don't think you can do it, baby. Make no bones about it. The scum is not some hick. The scum is not some hillbilly wrestling fan that's looking up his Wikipedia to get his facts to try and stump. Now, don't send me in whose sister was backstage. Don't send me in who had a out-of-marriage affair in the hotel the night before. We want facts as far as the shows go. The scum is going to stay right on topic here today. Our first category will be this: SummerSlam moments. Not the new, I'm talking my age, when I was really, really, really into what was going on the first 5 years. You try and stump the scum, you send along any question pertaining to SummerSlam 1988 through 1992. Submit those questions to steventhescum@gmail.com. Include your name, include your Facebook name, because you're hiding behind your keyboard like all you gutless cowards always do. See if you can stump the scum, but I don't think you can do it, baby.
Get out of town. Have a modicum of decency calling our readers and listeners hicks. What's wrong with you?
I speak the truth, my friend, and don't forget, I'm the scum, and I've got the brains, baby.
Oh, get out of here. Well, listen to this, Scum. I'll tell you what. You got your own special feature. I made one of my own. As you well know, I just built a nice new house, and I got this beautiful empty garage, and I want to do something with it. I think I'm going to make it my man cave. And what I've always wanted is a picture collection of some of the most ridiculous wrestling souvenirs they've ever created. I want to hang them on my wall. I would think it would be great to have you, the fans, the readers, and the listeners, show us what you think are some of the most ridiculous items you've ever seen for sale by any wrestling company ever made. I want to call it the Gimmick Garage Sale. That's right, folks. We have yet another special segment on Wrestling Glory Days Weekly, and that is called the Gimmick Garage Sale. Email me at steventhescum@gmail.com. Give me your name and a picture of what you think I would want to hang up on my Gimmick Garage. If I choose your photo, we will contact you shortly thereafter, and we will definitely have a special gift to send out to you. So please don't forget, send us your name, your address, and, of course, that picture of the most ridiculous-looking merchandise you've ever seen so I can hang it up on my wall for the Gimmick Garage Sale. What do you think about that, Scum?
I just walked in there. I don't exactly know what was going on there with what came over me in that last segment. I think that sounds like great stuff. I mean, happy to hear that our readers are going to be involved interactively. We really appreciate all their feedback. And I think that's a great idea. I know you, and you could sell a drunk man a Muskogee oceanfront property. So if anyone can sell the old merchandise that the readers will be sending in, I got faith that it could be you, my brother. But next, I think that we're going to head in a little different direction here and get a little cultured. Another new segment here that we're going to center today around SummerSlam, and will be a feature that you will see back on the show. You'll hear, back on the show from time to time, and it is called the Beatnik Body Slam. Why don't you tell our readers about it, Steve?
I will do so. Today centers around some beautiful work from SummerSlam's past, but what the Beatnik Body Slam is basically some of the best promos that you can remember told in the right fashion by not only the Scum, but yours truly, Steve himself. Today, as I had mentioned, centers around some beautiful, poetic work from SummerSlam's past. Scum, would you like to lay it on me, my smooth daddy-o?
Well, I would like to lay it on you, Steve. Let me loosen my vocal cords here so I can do this properly. The following will come from you from the hallowed halls of Wembley Arena, and the year was 1992. And the first piece will come from the poet laureate, the knighted Sir Richard Flair. And it goes a little something like this. Now rest assured, a little man, it was not I alone that was disgruntled over the fact that the great Ric Flair was denied his opportunity to regain the World Wrestling Federation Championship right here at SummerSlam. After all, when you are talketh about the bright lights and the big cities, you must be talketh about London, England. And when you're talketh about SummerSlam, and when you're talketh about the World Wrestling Federation, you have got to be talking about Richard Flair. Woo! Because anyone who knows anything about Richard Flair knows that he stays ready for any kind of action. Ha ha! Ha ha! Ha ha! Why, Mr. Perfect, he is in the dressing room. Of whom? He is in the dressing room of the winner. Whom else? Woo! Woo!
Very Shakespearean from one Sir Richard Fleer. I, my friend, will take us over across the pond to the city of brotherly love, to a man whom is always known by two different names, the Weasel or the Brain, Robert Heenan. Wait a minute, pal. I'll handle this one. You see, I know a lot about this Texas tornado, because if you've seen one, you've seen them all. Do you know why you're called the Texas tornado? Because you've got your head in the clouds. And if you have your head in the clouds, pal, you don't have your feet on the ground. You see, a Texas tornado never really does any damage, because you can spot one a mile away. Sure, they may look ferocious, but all they're good for is kicking up some dust. And maybe, just maybe, turning over a few mobile homes in some hick trailer park on the Panhandle. And there you have it, folks. Beatnik Body Slam.
Very eloquent, my friend. Very eloquent. I personally, I feel more cultured. I turned around. I didn't even know what happened. Next thing I knew, I was wearing a full three-piece suit. My hair was neatly combed back, and geez, I didn't know you had that in you. I mean, to hell with Leap and Lanny Poffo. I'm going to get my buddy Steve throwing some Frisbees out into the crowd here.
You know, it's ironic because I just put on a nice silk smoking jacket and an ascot, and I already feel smarter. I actually read a whole page worth of real words. Imagine that. And I didn't get a single bit of Cheetos dust on the page.
Yeah, that's saying something. You don't find that much.
Well, that was some great stuff. I know I feel a lot more cultured, and I hope you do too. But our last segment, to get you all ready for the biggest night of summer for the WWE SummerSlam, let's talk about the best performer, the Mr. SummerSlam, if you will. Shawn Michaels has laid claim to the name Mr. WrestleMania, and I know for a fact Undertaker, or maybe even Hulk Hogan, may have a little bit to say about that. But Scum, who would you pick to wear the title of Mr. SummerSlam?
Wow, great question, Steve. You just keep the hits coming here today. Again, it's always a pleasure to be working alongside such a well-prepared and talented performer as yourself. Mr. SummerSlam, interesting. Again, I think that it's obvious, sort of, who I would have to go with there. I mean, I ran through my picks for the matches earlier, and it's hard to deny, even on top of those moments, you added another one, whether you go with Bulldog Classic at SummerSlam 92, you go with the Perfect 91, Intercontinental title match, you go with that Taker match that I mentioned in 97. You specifically mentioned him and his brother Owen in 1994 in the steel cage. I mean, you also had, again, our swing and a miss, even though it didn't have the build-up properly. Great match, a good match with Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson and the Hart Foundation. A couple of years while they were still in the tag ranks, they had matches with Demolition. Bret Hart has had so many good matches at SummerSlam that are just undeniable. And, classic matches that my pick for Mr. SummerSlam is a no-brainer, I would think, in Bret the Hitman Hart. Again, I'm not saying that because I'm a fan of his. I'm not saying that because I've always been a pink and black guy, like I said earlier. But to me, Steve, the answer to your question, Bret the Hitman Hart, Mr. SummerSlam. Now, I would be extremely interested to hear what direction you would go. Who's your Mr. SummerSlam, my friend?
Well, we talked about him earlier as well, Scum, and that's going to be the Ultimate Warrior. I'm going to pick the Ultimate Warrior to be Mr. SummerSlam because the first 4 years of his existence in the World Wrestling Federation, it seems as though, barring WrestleMania 6 where he won the World Championship from Hulk Hogan in Toronto, SummerSlam was really the pay-per-view of the year where the Ultimate Warrior was the main event guy, and he went out, and he was the top draw. And I thought that prior to all the fanfare now and how all the big pay-per-views get so much more pomp and circumstance, one of your words, the Ultimate Warrior really stood out to me early on as SummerSlam was something that Vince McMahon was just getting going, that really was his feature guy. So I'm going to go with the Ultimate Warrior, Scum.
It's open to debate. I mean, I said Bret, you say Warrior. It's undeniable that both of those men have had their moments at SummerSlam. I mean, just when you said that, I was sprinting back and forth across my living room, hitting the walls as though I was hitting the ropes, stopping to shake the coffee table a few times, lean back, flip my hair back, scream out loud, beat my chest, and then I started running around the living room again. So, hey, I'm not arguing with you on the Warrior selection. I can see where he could be Mr. SummerSlam. Good choice, my friend.
Very nice. And I have to agree with you on Bret Hart. There's few people in the wrestling industry that can tell a story as well as Bret Hart. He's very versatile. He always has been. And he's someone that I certainly respect. I know he's one of your top guys. I'm sure he's in your top 3. He's in my top 10, so I'd have to say Bret the Hitman Hart, great candidate for Mr. SummerSlam. We're about to end the day, folks, but I wanted to let you know, once again, how many ways you can get a hold of us. Email us at steventhescum@gmail.com. Tune into our page, Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. We have our own side page where you can come and tell the Scum how stupid he is, and that is at WGD Weekly, Facebook.com/WGD Weekly. You can catch us all over the place. We're having a little bit of problems with iTunes. I am driving to Seattle, and I am beating someone's face in. I'm about sick of dealing with those folks. So anyway, I'm going to take care of some small technical difficulties we have at iTunes. We'll be back up and running before you know it, folks, but there's plenty of places. YouTube.com/MrA33. That's our channel. Subscribe. We update weekly. All of our shows go directly to YouTube so it's easy for you guys to watch. If you can't stream, you can download at TalkShoe.com. All that information will be on our page, Wrestling's Glory Days. It will be on WGD Weekly as well. I hope you guys enjoy SummerSlam this evening. And Scum, is there anything else you got to say?
Yeah, I just want to remind our loyal listeners of a few things here, Steve. First off, I want to remind you, like we said, come over, check out our new, as well as checking out Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook, as you always do. Shoot over and check out WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum on Facebook. interact with us, like we were saying. We got those new segments. We got Steve's Gimmick Garage Sale. We got Stump the Scum. Be sure and submit those questions for Stump the Scum at gmail.com, and we will be awaiting those. Those will be picked out. Remember, the first topic that will be addressed for Stump the Scum on September the 8th on that show will be SummerSlam, 1988 through 1992. If you think you can stump the scum, you're going to win some really cool stuff, so give it a whirl, see what you can do. And as I was saying earlier, I don't think you can do it, baby. Also, don't forget, we got coming up next week, the first of back-to-back weeks of our hardcore double play. Bushwhacker Luke is going to be here reliving his 50-plus years in the wrestling industry with Steve and the Scum. We can't wait for that. That is just August the 25th. Program. That's next Sunday at 6 p.m. The following week, Steve and the Scum will go to the extreme with ECW's former world heavyweight champion, Justin Credible. He's going to be here. The date on that one is September 1. That's 6 p.m. Sunday, September 1st with Justin Credible. And that's about all I got for you. Everybody enjoy the pay-per-view tonight if you're watching it. If not, it is SummerSlam Day. Pop in an old classic rendition of the show and enjoy it that way if you like. Steve, always a pleasure to do business with you. We thank our loyal listeners here. And that's about all I think that I got. Hey, wait a minute. What the hell is going on here? What is that?
What's going on? Hey, give me a break. What are you people doing back here?
Steve, what the hell?
What is this all about? What are you doing? Oh, man, I don't know about you, Scum, but I think I'm about ready to get out of here. We're out of time. Join us next week. We got Bushwhacker Luke. That interview's already in the can, and it is great. Enjoy SummerSlam tonight. We got Just Incredible the week after that. I'm getting the hell out of here.
I'm with you, brother.